Welcome, disciples, scions, and voyeurs of the strange. I'm Whist, archdruid of this grove within the wild dream, here with Wisteria, the devious fox elemental,
Hello, hi everyone.
and we have an extra special guest, Alex.
Hey everybody, Alex of Cirsova here.
Yeah, I'd like to say, punk rock editor of Cirsova magazine, and he's got a new collection of short stories, The Mighty Sons of Hercules, and Alex is on because I've actually been following him for a while and reading some of his fiction reviews from the late 2000 teens led me to discovering what are some of my favorite fantasy books, like King of Elfland's Daughter, The Adventures of Farford and the Grey Mouser, and he is well read in the genre of pulp fiction and weird tales, and that's what makes him an extra special guest today. So we'll talk about the book. Oh, let me drop a link to this book for those that are curious.
While you do that, I am really curious. So, Alex, how do you come across such stories like the one with King of Elfland's Daughter? Because Wismar showed it to me, and I was super excited by it, and became one of my favorite. And I know he gets a lot of recommendations from you.
Well, it really kind of goes back to when I was doing Cirsova as a Dungeons and Dragons blog. I'd been following Jeffro Johnson, who had been doing reviews of the Appendix N books that were what was cited as the literary inspiration for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And so he was putting these names on my radar of things to look out for. And at the same time, I was starting to get into some of the older pulp stuff. I managed to find a really big treasure trove of pulp magazines at a local flea market that I got as many of those as I could afford. And just, I started really digging into them, getting into the stories, the authors, just the massive difference in what science fiction and fantasy were like in the earlier part of the 20th century. And, that kind of set me down the path of shifting from a gaming blog to a fiction blog to eventually becoming a fiction publisher.
Very cool. Yeah, and I think one thing that I found super exciting about those old tales that have been forgotten is the element of wonder that just feels like it's completely missing from anything published today.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed is how self-referential fantasy fiction especially became after the 1980s, because you go from having all of the different kinds of fantasy and science fiction that went into shaping the culture of gaming, both the Dungeons and Dragons side and other fantasy RPGs and science fiction RPGs, to people taking their inspiration more directly from those games themselves or the video games that were based on them.
Right, and
So so
I've
what you end up having happen is a weird situation where what somebody thinks of as, Tolkienian fantasy is actually uh, Warcraft through that's been filtered down over the years from, the stuff that inspired Warhammer through the license shift with Warcraft to the MMO stuff to all the other stuff just in the general gaming culture. And so people think of those tropes, especially from the video game era stuff, as what comprises fantasy and what makes up a lot of fantasy's narrative and thematic makeup, as opposed to the books that inspired the games, that inspired the games, that inspired the games that people are playing and taking their inspiration from.
Yeah, and I wanted to like address that element of wonder first because I think it's one of our one of the through lines from fiction to the strange news that we cover, because we do strange news here to kind of explore wonder in our current world and like be able to share that with the people that are watching, and it inspires like the artistic projects that we do, from art to comics to uh, everything that we have going on. And it also kind of gels very well with our own sort of playful curiosity that we uh, share with all the strange things happening in around the world, and just, you know, having fun with it here on stream. So I'm glad we have you on to talk about these elements of wonder in fiction and being able to uncover some more unexpected things and embrace the strange again today. Now, would you say that this element also carries over to the Gonzo strongman short stories that are Mighty Sons of Hercules?
Kind of in a sense, yeah. The Mighty Sons of Hercules project that we're doing has its roots in the strongman of the circus who was a big star in the 19th century and into the early 20th century, and it was this figure who would entertain with feats of strength that appeared superhuman, that largely gave rise and inspiration to the comic book superhero. You really have kind of two branching genealogies of superheroes. You have the one that kind of goes back to the masked Avenger type person, who the dexterous crime fighter, crime solver. But then you also have the guy who he doesn't cover his face. He just he shows up. He's big. He's strong. He saves the day when he's there. You know that things are going to get better. And so, you have like Batman coming out of the masked vigilante mystery solver tradition, and then you have Superman who comes out of the strongman tradition.
Yeah.
And the Mighty Sons of Hercules itself is an homage to a 1960s syndicated series that took several of these strongman movies that were set, in antiquity, Bronze Age, early Iron Age, or even the Stone Age, and they packaged them for Saturday morning syndication, where you could see the first half of the movie one week and then the next half of the movie the next week in hour installments, or you could just broadcast the whole thing in one go. And this came from a cinema boom in the early half of the 60s, where after you had the big costume epics of the 50s, like the Ten Commandments and that sort of thing. But in the late 50s, there was a big budget Hercules movie that starred Steve Reeves. And this was at a time when, bodybuilders were becoming international superstars. And this thing was a huge box office success. Everybody kind of wanted to replicate that, so you got this wave of these strongman superhero characters, set in antiquity. And it's basically like a Superman type story, but they don't fly, but they have the superhuman strength. They can lift large objects, throw things farther than a normal mortal man could, and they fight on the side of good, justice to save the day, protect the innocent, rescue the girl, overthrow the evil queen, that sort of thing.
Very cool. Yeah, and we do actually have some current strongman, Ripley's Believe It or Not type news to cover today. But before we go into that, there was a bit of strange news that may not be related to today's topic, but it's fun and I wanted to cover it for our audience. And I have screen sharing up for both of you so you can see what's going on. You might be familiar with this story now that you see it. Oh, let me make sure it's actually showing up on stream for everybody. Here we go. So there was this woman on a plane who people are saying she saw a reptilian, and let's see what's going on. Sound on? Good.
Say whatever you want. I'm telling you, I'm getting the off, and there's a reason why I'm getting the off, and everyone can either believe it or they cannot believe it.
She even saying, believe it or not.
I don't give two but I am telling you right now, that mother back there is not real. And you can sit on this.
I don't think we're getting any audio on it.
Oh, you're not getting any audio on it?
I am. Wait, on the screen sharing. Maybe if I need to check if it's not turned off or anything.
Oh, like it might be muted on his end?
Yeah. I click on it and see in the corner if it has any sign of it being muted.
And I don't mind rewinding it.
I saw this story a couple of times on Twitter, and people will say different stuff, like she saw a reptilian, then she saw an alien, she saw a demon, she saw a ghost.
Yeah. There have been like some really interesting reactions to it, and I think that's kind of, oh no, it wants me to log in before I can look at the comments.
Yeah, they've locked out the outsiders.
Okay, let me take care of that real quick. And I hope the sound is good for everybody watching on stream.
I think it's good. I checked.
Okay, great.
Or not. Wait. Yeah, it is.
All right, here we go. Back in business.
Say whatever you want. I'm telling you, I'm getting the off, and there's a reason why I'm getting the off, and everyone can either believe it or they cannot believe it. I don't give two but I am telling you right now, that mother back there is not real. And you can sit on this plane and you can die with them or not. I'm not going to.
There we go. But it has really blown up, and we've got like lots of people responding to it, making videos saying that they were there, but it's really just pranks and people having fun with the situation.
I don't know why they're checking the bins above your head, like the reptilian can hide in there.
There was some good stuff. Let's see. I mean, this thread has actually blown up since I last looked at it. But they've got that. There was one I saw in here of the cat that's in the meme cat in a hoodie, and it was some funny stuff. So, what do you guys think? You think it was reptilian in a green hoodie?
I kind of want to see the story from the reptilians' point of view.
Yeah, like I said, there have been a lot of people claiming to be the reptilian, and they're like, this is what happened. And there's other people that say they've been on the plane and sort of making up their own stories. And there was also some good jokes about Mark Zuckerberg actually being on the plane, and that's who she was talking about. But that can't be true because she was not in first class.
True. Okay. Maybe she was just shocked to see him in the economy.
Yeah. Um, are there any reptilian-related stories in Mighty Sons of Hercules?
Yeah, and not necessarily lizard men, but in Manfred Weishel's story, we do have a race of intelligent serpents.
Eric Sprague is caught between two worlds.
Race of humanoids, and the strong man has to save them from these serpents.
Very cool. Yeah, like I don't know if this is true or not, but what I've read a few times that Conan was like the first appearance of the reptilian.
Paul.
Paul was?
It was Call in
Call.
the Shadow Kingdom, where basically this guy comes up to him and is like, you know that everybody who's in your cabinet and in your court is actually a secret reptile person who's going to try to kill you, right? Oh no, I didn't know that. Yeah, so there's basically a lizard man conspiracy against King Cole that he and his buddy have to try to root out. That's just sort of one of the general themes in Cole is the mysterious conspiracy that's just forever trying to undermine his reign.
Yeah, and I think Robert Howard may not have been into it, but he was at least aware of the sort of weird topics from Thelema that kind of come up in H.P. Lovecraft's stuff and his own. And I'm wondering if the whole idea of the Reptilian Man kind of comes from those strange kinds of occult beliefs. But I haven't delved enough into it to
I
say for
haven't
sure.
researched deeply enough into it to be able to say one way or another. But that Cole story in Weird Tales, I think, is one of the earliest instances of the reptoid conspiracy that I've come across.
Yeah, we could say at least in popular popular fiction.
But I feel like you can find these half human, half reptile creatures in any culture and in their stories
definitely.
and everything. And there's quite a big difference in terms of narration and pace between types of folklore. Like you have fables and fairy tales and mythology and legends, and these tend to be the inspiration for a lot of authors. Do you have like a specific preference when it comes to folklore? Like, do you tend to choose specific stories or myths from around the world when you're researching your own stuff or choosing just stories for your magazine?
I mean, I really enjoy a lot of takes from antiquity. And this is something that I think you guys would enjoy. I don't know if you've heard of Thomas Burnett Swan.
Yeah.
He was an antiquarian who wrote a lot of short novels that took place either in ancient Greece or ancient Rome or ancient Mediterranean. And his assumption going into all of the writing was all of the myths were literally true, except in a few cases where, it's twisted around just a little bit to give it a unique flavor. Where like, oh, this was actually a misunderstanding of this. Like, in one of his stories, he takes the concept of the Cretan bear worshipping cult, the priestesses who worship bears, and he kind of shifted that to, well, there were actually bear girls that lived on Crete and, would hang out with the minotaurs, satyrs, and other mystical animals in the wilderness.
Yeah, actually, Thomas.
So I always thought that was kind of a neat approach of, taking the myths as literally true and what sort of ramifications that would have if you took a realistic approach to writing your world and your characters.
Yeah, and he really goes into the non-human side of the folklore, which I find the most
Yeah,
interesting.
a lot of look at the non-human psychology, especially. One of the things I talk about in my submission criteria is how we don't like elves, and part of it is because so few people are able to really capture the weird fae aspect of elves. Swan was all about honing in and focusing on the uncanny differences between sprites and fey creatures and the humans that they interact with. So, you'd have these characters who interact with humans, but, they, even when sometimes they seem almost human like, there's always something about them that's a little off. The fact that they aren't human, they're not a souled being, ends up kind of coming through. There's a little bit of twinge to their morality, and their logical approaches to things aren't the same as the logical approach that a human would take to a situation.
Yeah,
And I
and
think being able to capture that is a really important aspect of whether or not you should try to include things like elves in your writing.
yeah, and he makes it so much wider than just elves too, which makes it even more
Oh,
interesting.
absolutely, yeah.
But I bet that even though you stated like you're not accepting elf stories, that you still get submissions with like, no, but hear me out. You haven't heard about my take on elves.
Yeah, yeah, we do get that a lot.
I feel
And
like
the
people
thing
would be
is if we
interested
do
to
see
see.
something that really blows us away, we'll go with it, yeah. But it's largely it's to discourage generic Dungeons and Dragons elf type submissions.
Yeah, because this is what people are most familiar with,
They're
and
gonna send us their World of Warcraft night elves or whatever, or their something like that. And we're not interested in that kind of stuff.
more into the strange. That's why I dig this stuff.
I'm more into the memeable idea. So, like, if you're ever bored, you can gather all these elf stories and just bundle them up into this. Even it can be just on web. You don't have to print it. It can be like an elf bin, like the dumpster elves, and they're just like a bunch of elf stories. Everything that didn't make the cut.
Dumpster elves. But we do have a Romanian folklore story to share that Wisteria is going to do later on.
Yeah.
With it includes superhuman abilities and sort of is along the lines of the discussion today. But that'll be later. And I have this clip that's kind of not in line with where we're going, but this is from Ripley's Believe It or Not, bringing us back to reptilians.
Eric Sprague is caught between two worlds, human and reptile.
And I have this
Eric Sprague is
clip that's kind of.
Uh-oh, we got feedback. There we go. Cool. But yeah, I just wanted to share that because he was dancing. He's reptilian. All right, so I do have a question. With your experience with Weird Tales, do you think that the like 1920s strange news became Weird Tales, like anything like how folklore turned into fantasy fiction? That's my
There's
own Believe It or Not
always
question.
there's always been that kind of interesting weird tales and weird fiction. And really,
Years of cruel
see,
isolation,
at least
with his face
in
hidden.
the American market, is a shift from you had the cultism of the 19th century, the theosophy, the table turning, the seances, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And there was news about it, and people would incorporate that into stories. There was the American Gothic stuff, like the stuff Nathaniel Hawthorne and Poe were writing. And that there was a steady, natural progression and evolution of that towards what we think of now as weird fiction. And you had magazines like Weird Tales because people wanted, they wanted those stories to be siloed a little bit better, curated better. You would find stories like that in the weekly Muncie mags, like All Story Weekly or whatever, and but people wouldn't necessarily want to have to pick up the magazine and have the cowboy story, the miner story, the sailor story, and the ghost story. They might have just wanted it for the ghost story. And so as there was more demand for that kind of fiction, there were markets that opened up that said, "Yeah, we'll just run all of this kind of stuff. You don't have to worry about cozy romances or the manners novels or the regular short adventure fiction. We're just going to publish weird ghost stories, gothic horror, and stuff like that." That's where you got magazines like Weird Tales.
That is such an amazing insight, and I'm so glad that we got to hear it because, yeah, I mean, yeah, I am blown away.
Yeah, and so there really is, you can trace a direct lineage of the stuff from that occultism of the 19th century up through stuff like Lovecraft and Howard, and the stuff that was being published and weird up through the 40s even.
Yeah, because that's sort of like an idea I just had an inkling of, but you're putting it together so well. That's why I'm kind of fanning out about it.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was really, it mostly had to do with the fact that the expanding markets of readership in general were just so booming because of the pulp era, and the fact that it was making so much fiction and content available to so many people, uh, that it just gave birth to sort of the genreification of fiction so that people could better find what they were interested in.
okay. And where would you say that your passion for this style of fiction came from? Like, what really drew you to it?
I mean, I've been a fan of Lovecraft stuff for a long time since I was in high school. Um, Really, what I look for in Cirsova tends to be kind of a mix of different things because it really all boils down to my own personal tastes. So with Cirsova magazine, you end up with this weird mix of both the weird tale stuff and like the planet story style adventures that aren't necessarily weird fiction. They're more either straight space adventures, sword and planet, ray gun romance, that sort of thing. Because I enjoy the stuff, the weird tales type stuff, I do try to work some of that in as well. We kind of cover a few different markets and genres within our own publication that way.
So we mentioned a little bit about reptilian men as monsters being in the Mighty Sons of Hercules. Are there any other kind of weird tie-ins to the stories that's part of this collection?
Oh, well, the novella that we have, the Melkart novella, kind of goes a little bit back towards what I was talking about with Swan. It doesn't have as many sort of fairy elements or weird elements to it, but you do have some of the classic uh, antiquity monsters. You have a Cyclops, or some stories with uh, manticores.
Yeah, that's perfect.
One of the guys in one of the other stories had to fight a giant praying mantis.
That's what I'm talking about.
This is
The
right.
cover story there actually The cover story there, actually, the guy is fighting a mutant hybrid thing that's kind of a cross between a giant weasel and a crocodile. Um, the cover story actually was inspired by the 1960s comic Mighty Samson, which takes the concept of the strongman and sticks him in a post-apocalyptic radioactive New York. You've got the big strong guy with the superhuman strength fighting giant mutants in the subways and the ruins of civilization. And so and that story that kind of works a little bit of the the mutant theme in there.
Cool. Yeah, and we're gonna segue into a little bit more of the Ripley's Believe It or Not. We've got a throwback to the actual show here with a feat of strength and some superhuman like balancing act here. And we're gonna build back up into crazier things as we go. So here we go. He's about to balance this person on his chin.
This person on his.
Oh, did your earbuds come loose? Yeah. So that's the simple stuff. But let's get crazier. How much crazier do we have? So we've got somebody being hit by sledgehammers, not very hard, just testing him out. And these are actually Marines. This is Cannonball Richards from the 1930s. Kind of harkening back to our discussion about the strongman axe. That looks pretty intense.
Do you
Yeah,
think
I mean,
he
it was
trained
stuff like this absolutely that inspired the superhero like Superman.
Yeah.
The guy who could just shrug off a punch like it was nothing and then pick you up and throw you across the room.
So do you think this is a talent or is this something you can train for?
It's something you definitely have to do a lot of training for. It's it takes a lot of practice to do stuff like that, and the taking a punch thing involves the flexing the muscles that you've built up that strength for. Like Houdini, like the way Houdini died supposedly is he was famed because he could take any punch, and some guy's like, "Hey, I heard you could take any punch." He's like, "Yeah, I can." And then the guy just like sucker punched him,
Yeah.
or
Isn't
whatever, because he wasn't and stuff he wasn't ready for.
and didn't that actually
So
lead to his death too?
actively utilized.
We've got. I think this is pretty crazy. It used to be more of a circus show where they would do the shallow dives from atop a platform into a bucket of water. We have a Guinness Book of World Records here set at 36 feet. He's going to jump into a kiddie pool with a belly flop. And I actually met somebody like recently who used to do that show in the circus. We just randomly met in a doctor's office and having fun talking, sharing circus stories.
Yeah, but I bet it was quite hard on him because he was at a doctor's office.
Yeah, he wasn't there showing up for injuries or anything. All right, here we go. We've got the Hercules Hold. I think it's more like Samson-like, but that's not an alliteration. So this is the world record for the Hercules Hold 2019. He's going to hold together these two massive pillars. So this is recent stuff where we've got like real strongman challenges, and strongman scene is still alive and well. You just need to search it out. That's quite an audience too.
I bet you want to be in that
Probably call it
audience.
Hercules because that's from one of the famous scenes from the Steve Reeves Hercules movie.
Oh, okay. So
In
it
fact,
is.
if you look up Steve Reeves Hercules, like the image will pop up, Hercules chained between those pillars.
Hey Alex, would you mind bringing your mic a bit closer?
Yeah, so there it's like a timed record. And he doesn't even look like he's struggling.
He looks straight up chilling.
Chilling with the pillars.
Yeah. He's doing a mild stretch.
Got a little bit more shaking happening. So yeah, he's already passed the previous leader at 50 seconds and adds on another 30. And it gets wilder. We're gonna go over to TikTok for this one. Because TikTok is actually where the fun stuff is at for this.
How could I be so stupid?
We have a saying here that I do the dumpster diving of TikTok, so you don't have to. So this is another strongman contest, and he's throwing a barrel over a hurdle kind of thing.
How could I be so stupid?
Doesn't get it over, lands right on his head, and he doesn't seem to be bothered. Now, there is this guy that's exploded on TikTok, Sergey. He's from, I want to say Kazakhstan.
You're trying to play GeoGuessr based off of this video alone.
No, there's a video here that'll say exactly where he's from, so we'll get there. And he's got a good bit of showmanship, which I think is why he has exploded. And that relates to the sort of strongman showmanship, but for the modern age. Here we go. We got a woman having trouble opening a can of soda. And look at the size of the man. And he just rips off the top altogether.
That's unnecessary.
Yeah, he's got some feats of grip strength that are pretty amazing. That's like his best stuff, I found.
Mm-hmm.
Some more.
My strength is
Yeah, here we go. So here's the intro for Sergey.
scary. He opens soda cans by ripping the top off with his fingers. He hammers nails with his bare hands, and there's no chain that can hold him up. And trust me, that's just the tip of the iceberg, because he is so freakingly strong, even the world's strongest men are scared of him. And when they try to imitate his tricks, they fail miserably.
He just literally grabs it like that and tears it off. You think you can do it? Ah! Oh my God.
But what's even crazier is that some of his feats are so dangerous that if you try to imitate them, you will most likely die. This is the story of the strongest man on TikTok.
Yeah, or at least cause bodily injury.
Sergey Sarulnikov is a TikToker from Kazakhstan,
Hey, I was right.
mostly known for his incredible strength feats. His videos often consist of him lifting heavy weights, crushing things, and bending.
Can your Watermelon Man do that?
I'm not sure. For people who don't know, I have I'm living in a neighborhood which is like in the urban area, and there's this farmer guy who comes by with his truck, and he's selling watermelons and fruits and whatever he wants out of his truck, and it's usually like fresh fruits, and he's just yelling watermelon, and I find it funny because you wouldn't necessarily hear that in an urban place.
Yeah, and they have that trick where they poke it with a toothpick to show you how bursting with juiciness it is.
Yeah, how ripe they are.
Yeah, but this is next level.
And bending steel.
Let's see. See, go ahead.
So people watching our stream right now can get some inspiration to write stories with these superpowers.
Yeah, and he brings a whole kind of magician's showmanship to it too. I don't know if he does any kind of like preparation on materials. This one, he's just ripping up a piece of wood here, and normally when you do like karate chops and break wood, they are pre-cut. But the way that this thing rips doesn't look like it's pre-cut. So I don't know how much magician tricks he's doing.
I got a splinter just from watching.
Got a few more. This is a horseshoe. So you can see he's obviously straining, so it's not just like a gimmick horseshoe. And he's using his whole body. So that's more than movie magic. And look, he made a heart.
No, that's romance. He tore it apart. So I was curious, from all these stories that you get, did you notice a specific kind of superpower, and which one is the most prevalent?
For this,
Uh-oh, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, for this, we specifically solicited our contributors who we wanted for this as a set of guidelines. We pointed out some of the particular films that we were inspired by for it. And so, generally speaking, it's just going to be the super strength, the ability to lift large things, bend bars, be able to throw a guy across the room, fight several guys at once, maybe be able to lift a tree log and fight somebody with a tree log. One of the characters in one of the stories actually uses a fallen timber support beam from a house to keep dragons at bay. So
Amazing.
I mean, it's generally going to be like feats of strength, not like any sort of particular specific power. Like nobody's going to have Superman's ice breath or something.
Yeah, or this power of magnetism here. Touching a battery. Yeah, so there's some believe it or not. That's actually a video just put in reverse for some movie magic. And that's kind of the fun stuff also that I believe from hearing your other interviews kind of inspired the project with the whole Hercules kind of style movies. I think you called it Machiste.
Well, Machiste was one of the characters who was revived during this boom. Generally, the genre is called either peplum or sword and sandal.
Okay. Yeah, doing their movie magic to show these amazing feats of strength with cheap what do they call it? practical effects.
Yeah, it's easy to have a giant wall that's made out of material that looks like it's stone, but it's actually ultralight foam.
Yeah. Bending rubber.
I can bend rubber.
Oh, and I wanted to make sure we shared some Mole Man. So I know there was a Mole Man tie-in with one of the movies. We got some real Mole Man news here for you. Back up.
New Yorkers live in boroughs.
And Wisteria loves her puns.
What's up, Mole Man? Hey, what's up, Nico? Chilling.
There we go. Real life Mole Man. Cool.
Wismore is unearthing the best kind of content.
Yeah, like I said, we like to have fun here. A lot of tongue-in-cheek, strange news. Wisteria, did you have some things you wanted to cover today too?
Yes, so I put together kind of like a shorter version of this really long folklore fairy tale.
Oh no, we've been missing the chat. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
We've got like a whole list here of chats I just saw. DB, hello. Jonathan Weishel, good to see you. Welcome.
And
Mac.
we have a Mac Quack, hello.
Rent still possibly high. It was a recent chat. Yes, still massively high underneath that cement slab. And it's my favorite woodling beings. And it's our favorite gin bartender, Mac. Sorry we're late to getting to the chat. Having a lot of fun talking to Alex from Cirsova. And I completely interrupted you for the chat. You were saying, Wisteria.
It's okay. Yes, so I prepared for everyone in chat and everyone who'd like to read a shorter version of a really, really long story that somehow I didn't quite appreciate when I was little. This, for anyone who doesn't know, I am Romanian, and I picked a Romanian story from our folklore to share with you guys, and it has not one, not two, but 5 characters that have superpowers, and some are common, some are rather uncommon, but they all tie into the story.
Oh, I've got stuff for this too.
Yeah. You can put up on the screen what I sent you.
Yeah. And Jonathan Weishel is in the Mighty Sons of Hercules, it looks like. The Reptilian story is yours? Awesome.
Amazing. It all comes full circle.
And he's also a fan of the Weirwoods, which is Thomas Burnett Swan we were talking about earlier. Yeah. All right. Let me get this a bit smaller because we can't see the synopsis that you made for us. Whoa, that's bigger. There we go.
So this story is called Harap the White. Well, in Romanian, Harap kind of means either Moor or slave. But slaves didn't used to have names, so this is why he got this name. And slaves would usually be identified by something, I don't know, that was recognizable about them. So because he was just white, he was called like the white slave. So this was the translation, but I kept the story written with Harap as his name so people can follow along better. And he is sent to visit his uncle in a nearby country, and along the way he meets these characters with superpowers, and he gets into quite a bit of trouble, and these characters become his friends and like his group, and they are trying to get through these challenges together using these superpowers. So after they defeat each challenge, they get closer and closer to this goal of him marrying this king's daughter. But in the end, the story has a good ending if anyone is worrying about it. So you have up on the screen, I put some art from a Romanian comic that tackles a bit of the story, and they kind of start from the story and go on with their own take, but still keep the characters. I want to share the link. So for anyone who wants to read it, we posted it on our Ko-fi. And can I put links in chat?
Yeah, it won't kick him out.
Okay, there you go. That is the link. So I put the characters in there just so you guys can see and get a bit enticed for the visuals. There are quite a few of them, so it's hard to keep up with them, even though the story that I wrote is shorter. And if anyone would like, we can take suggestions, and I would like to write some more of Romanian folklore for our Ko-fi page. Maybe even take some inspiration from it and submit to the magazine. How about that? I'm more like
Yeah, we've actually got a few other Romanian authors, so
that's
Oh,
cool.
cool. No idea.
yeah, we've Liviu Sorogiu and Rodica Breton are both from Romania, and I know that Liviu has done a lot to try to spread awareness of the magazine in Romania.
Oh, that's cool.
Hey, you might actually stumble across it. But that's really cool, like having these sort of a folklore group of superheroes, really like the precursor to comics, and then it's turned into comics, and yeah, it's just really cool stuff.
Yeah, and in terms of the superpowers they have, one of them has the superpower that he can see really far away, but I don't mean like the 20/20 vision. He can see like entire countries away with a lot of clarity. He can see through buildings, through forests, and he can spot just about anything as small as a bird. And that really comes in handy. And he's actually a cyclops. And whenever he sees stuff, he has this beam of light in the direction that he looks in. And usually he keeps his eye covered because he sees more than he would like to. And this is
Dude,
like
that's
what is.
Cyclops.
I know, but
The
it's weighing
X-Man.
on him.
That's the X-Man.
Exactly.
Who knew it went
and-
back this far?
Yeah, to some small village in Romania.
Yeah. This
That
is
is his backstory.
This is the strange news you never expect that just unfolds here on our show.
Yeah, and the other one has this ability where he can really like take huge steps. But when I mean steps, he's growing out his legs to be kilometers long, and he can travel the earth in a few steps and go all around the earth. And he can even stretch out his limbs to grab people, and he's basically like his limbs are never ending.
He's basically, was it Dr. Steve Richards from Fantastic Four?
I don't know.
DB says he loves it.
Amazing.
And unfortunately, he got rejected from one of the boroughs of Mulman because of his credit score.
I'm sorry to hear that. Maybe next time. Or maybe you can start your own borough facility, something like a apartment building, but underground.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah,
so we
those
had
are
Elastic
yeah.
Man, and what's next?
We had one that can drink water, and that sounds lame, but he can really drink just about anything in terms of like he can drink an entire lake in one sip and leave it empty and dry. And that comes in handy when you drop like a magical sword in a lake and you can't find it and no one can like swim in.
Drain the lake.
they get challenges that really challenge them, whatever. In terms of like how, if I just describe the powers, you think they are lame, but they are really, really challenged.
Yeah, they really fit the circumstance, and it wouldn't have been able to be done without their very specialized superpower.
Exactly. So you can read all about it in the link I shared, and you can check out even our other Ko-Fi content, because we are brewing something special in there, like behind the scenes and everything. And you know, Alex, as I told you that I got really inspired by King of Elfland's Daughter, Wismore and I want to make a cover and some art for the inside of the book, and maybe like republish it, or I don't know, make something with it, because I really, really like the story and it needs some cool art.
Yeah, we've been very
Yeah,
inspired
that
by
would be
it.
really neat.
And there are quite a few versions out there, but not a lot of love really put into the artwork itself. So I think having a collectible version of King of Elfland's Daughter would be cool.
Yeah. And we are about to start on our own comic series too. And we're just gonna start slow with a few pages and everything. And I think we settled on the title. It's called Sorcery of the Moon.
Yeah.
And it's about a warlord called Dagon and a love priestess called Neve. And we already have two pages that kind of take a look at both the protagonists on our Ko-Fi for our second tier. And in the upcoming months, it will slowly be released to the lowest tier too. And if you like really want fast access, you can get the highest tier, and that is early, fast, exclusive access to all our content, sketches, upcoming projects, everything like that. But I'm super excited to start into making comics, because I kind of saw them, like saw the behind the scenes, how to make them, how to approach them, and I really want to make something unique.
Yeah, so our Ko-Fi members in chat, this is a little bit of what to look forward to in the coming weeks. And we're having fun every step of the way. It's just been exciting day in and day out doing this stuff. Woot woot is right.
Exactly. So I also am curious, Alex, when you choose the stories for your magazines, do you choose like a good variety for each magazine, or do you have a subtle theme for each one?
Really, any of the themes that we have for each issue tends to emerge based on what submissions we get. So really, I just try to look for stories that I really like, stories that I'm like, I just have to be able to publish this. And so usually what ends up happening is after the submissions are done and I've narrowed it down to about 40 or 50 stories, from those stories, I will try to see what kind of theme I can build for an issue. So, like for our upcoming issue that we have in September, it's going to be kind of a gothic horror themed issue. Whereas our issue that just came out is mostly sword and sorcery, sword and planet type adventure.
There seems to be like some sort of zeitgeist at the time of submission that kind of helps things come together? Is that why it kind of has like a natural sort of cohesion, or is there something else at work?
I think a big part of it has to do with the fact that we've become established well enough that most people submitting to us understand what we're looking for, and because we're having a lot of recurring authors who have written for us before, we kind of know what to expect from them. So I think that kind of helps create a consistency in tones and themes. of the issues because, like I said, I know what kind of stories that I'm going to be getting from someone like Misha Burnett. I know what kind of stories I'm going to be getting from somebody like Adrian Cole or any of our other regulars. And so I can work around those, and based on what I get from them, it becomes easy to fit in anything that's kind of new or on the outside or just completely out of left field. Sometimes you can still make something fit.
You mentioned Adrian Cole, and I hadn't read any of his stuff, and I didn't know like he's been putting stuff out there since the 70s, 1970s.
Yeah.
And I was looking through it last night just on Amazon, seeing what he had to offer. The Dream Lords look super cool, and so these are like really good authors that you have contributing to this current project, Mighty Sons of Hercules, and also the Cirsova magazine itself.
Yeah, we've managed to get some pretty good authors over the years working with us, and just being able to have them as part of the brand and deliver consistent content, whether it's in the same universe. We have several authors who send us stories of recurring characters, or if it's something different, like Misha Burnett, we run his stories every year, but it's always new, different stuff. Whereas with Adrian Cole, we've been publishing his new Dreamlord stuff. So it because we have an idea of what we get from the regular authors who work with us, and because there is that established quality. I think that makes it really easy for us to build around those particular works.
Yeah, and it I think does make it even more exciting to kind of have this whole vibe that it grew organically, and you've cultivated like a druid would with their plants.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's been a lot of fun these last several years building it up.
Now I'm curious in terms of how you go about the cover. Do you have the list of stories that you want to publish and then commission the cover, or do you go the other way around?
Usually, what we end up doing is we group the stories into issues first. We first of all, of course, we have to go through all the stories, and then based on our budget and space, we make the offers on the stories and acquire the content. And once we know everything that's going to be in the magazine for the next year, then we start trying to organize it by issue. And like I said, that's kind of where the theme comes in. And once we have the stories grouped by what issues we want them in, we go for the story that we think would be the best to use for a cover story. And then from that point, we try to reach out to some of the artists that we've been working with regularly who we think would be a good fit for that particular story and that particular cover.
To bring up the summer issue, which recently just came out too, and it has that Adrian Cole story in it from the Dream Lords. Where's the...
So I noticed there's a common style for the Cirsova covers. Who is the artist that's doing them?
We actually have a couple artists that we use. One of our main cover artists is Anton Oxenuk. He's been our main cover artist since 2018. We've also been having a few other people come in to give him a break. The most recent issue's cover was by Apriati Kuzbiantaro, who also did our summer issue last year. We've also been working some with a studio out of, I I believe, Singapore, Collateral Damage Studios, and one of their artists, Usa Nekarin, has been doing a couple of covers for us. He's slated to do the September cover.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also really enjoyed the Mongoose and Meerkat, which recently came out too. This the third volume just recently came out.
Yeah, we just dropped the third volume of that. And for people who've been following along in the magazine, we're not going to shortchange you guys. The last two stories will be out in the fall and winter issues.
Cool.
But if you wanted to avoid spoilers and go ahead and finish it up, the third volume is out now.
So the third volume covers what has already been released or is coming up?
Both. It's we included all the stories in the last volume, but the last two stories included in volume 3 are still being serialized in the magazine. We basically wanted to go ahead and strike while the iron was hot and get the third volume out there. And if fans wanted to read the ending early, they could pick up volume 3. But at the same time, we didn't want to do the thing, where people who have only been following along serially don't get the ending.
And I do want to check with anybody watching, if you have any questions about Alex's current offerings, any of the stories, feel free to drop them in and see if we can get them addressed. Wisteria, did you have more questions for Alex today too?
I think I was slowly going through them as we were talking.
Okay. Well, while people are writing, if they do have questions, I do have some more cutting UFO news.
And while you pull that up, I'll just go ahead and say we are taking submissions for 2024. We will be accepting stories from August 1st through August 7th. Our submission guidelines can be found on our webpage, which is Cirsova.
I can get it.
Cirsova.wordpress.com.
Yeah, Wisteria, if you're able to drop the link,
yes,
that'd be great.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's coming right up. Not too far off, less than a month. Getting in submissions for aspiring authors, or even authors that just want to get a story out. Have already aspired. So what we have here is, this is Ross Coulthart. He's a he's a journalist. He covers more than just UFOs. And there's been a lot of developments with whistleblowers coming forward from the United States and talking about black ops projects that are happening off the books. And the background for this particular piece of news is there's some new legislation that's currently, I think it's already passed the House, but it's in development. It hasn't been passed yet. And where it kind of gives these companies that are working on these projects 6 months to divulge everything that they've been doing. And so that's the background for what we're about to hear here.
To make it available to the all-domain anomaly resolution office.
Yeah, but Ross, doesn't that just give them 6 months or more to hide their shit?
Okay. People are going to question what I'm about to say. What if some of that shit is so big it can't be moved?
He said, what if it's so big that it can't be moved? Hold on a second. I'll mute the feedback real quick.
Is that what you're saying, Ross? Is that what you've been
That's
told?
exactly what I'm saying.
How big is big?
Big. So big,
As
they
big as
built
a
a building
UFO
over
big.
He's saying it's so big that they had to build a facility over it.
So big, they built a building over it in a country outside of the United States of America.
And once this piece of information dropped yesterday, there have been all these speculations of where is this facility. Some people have said that it's in Australia. Others say, I'm trying to remember, South Korea, somewhere in the Middle East too. So there's just like all kinds of people going crazy with speculation of where this ginormous UFO could be.
I know that sounds preposterous, and I know, oh my God, you can just hear them now, the bleating debunkers. Let's see this investigated. Let's just see what happens. Let's test these allegations before the Congress. It's very, very easy for people to go, oh, there's no evidence. Oh, my goodness me. Let's just go away and ignore it. Let's test it. We haven't even got there yet. You know, there's a whole cadre of supposed experts on social media who are saying it can't be, therefore it isn't. And that's been the default for so many years. It can't be, therefore it isn't.
And I can give a little bit more background too. The big splash whistleblower was, his last name was Grush, and he's actually in the business of investigating UAPs for the government. So that was actually his job of looking at these things, and he's the one coming forward. And the reason that we don't have evidence yet is because if he brings forth the evidence and drops it, on social media, then he's committed an illegal violation of divulging, government secrets. So he's going through the legal process of the whistleblower and telling people that would be the right people to tell. And it's a very slow process. So that's why we're not getting anything yet from his revelations. But there's what I heard, like 11 hours of his testimony have already been recorded, and it's being put before government officials now to review it and see what can be released. And then there's going to be hearings where we'll see how interesting those hearings turn out to be when they review all of the testimony and do their questions. And it'll be interesting to see what happens live.
Do people submit alien stories to you?
Yeah, actually, we've got in one of our upcoming issues, we have a weird Western alien abduction story.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think it's very cool that there's all of these tie-ins of current ongoing strange news to this whole style of fiction where if you're not getting enough entertainment just watching the weird things going on in the world, you can pick up some of these books and short stories and get that fix. Okay.
Wismar was slowly introducing me to like pulp fiction and every like movie that inspired it and some artists here and there. And whenever you find the story that kind of stands out, I'm just mind blown. I'm like, whoa, I want to do that, then I want to do that. And I feel like for you, Alex, since you've been doing this magazine for a few years, it's nice to get an ongoing flow of stories that you can get inspired by, to see like how many creative things people can come up with. And it's making me tingle just as an artist, and probably you as an editor. And it's this flow of creativity that's keeping a project going for so many years, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to do. Sometimes it can get a little bit overwhelming. I'm probably going to be feeling really overwhelmed about this time next month when I'm sitting under 150 stories I have to read. But it's a lot of fun. It's really rewarding.
Mm-hmm. And which would you say is the part about this whole magazine making thing that you do the most stressful, or the thing that tends to weigh on you the most sometimes when you get overwhelmed with how much things you have to do?
Probably the most stressful part is during submissions, because at that time, you have literally over 100 people who are waiting to hear back from you. And there are so many people that you just have to give bad news that, sorry, we can't buy your story. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times people will send us stuff. It's really good. We really like it, but we just don't have room. We don't have money to buy everything that we like. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy to just be like, sorry, but no.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I've heard you mention that you actually like respond to everybody, and
Yeah, I personally respond to every submission that we get.
yeah, and
I
give them.
tell everybody, yeah, we've got your story. I tell everybody, yeah, I've read it, and whether or not it's accepted. I try to give a little bit of feedback when I can, but it's not always a case of where I can, give a lot of feedback, because I've got so many things going on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because even while I'm doing the reading and stuff, I'm also doing those first round edits. And so, like, if I make an offer on a story, at least I've already got some of the light edits done the first time around. Save me some time on the back end, which is why it's a good idea to have a story that doesn't have a lot of typos or grammatical errors or anything, because I'm going to be going through and marking those while I'm reading it the first time. And if I just keep seeing too much stuff, I'm going to just be like, this is already more time than it's going to be worth, and I've got a huge stack of stories that I still need to get to. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
at the end of the day, it's not like you're correcting English essays or something. But I
yeah.
do wonder, with all these stories that you think they are cool, would you like them in your magazine, but your budget can only go so far? Do you tend to put them on a wait list, or how do you approach them? You just refuse them
Um,
and people tend to resubmit the same story?
Usually, unless I say specifically otherwise, I prefer people don't resubmit stories. But sometimes there are cases where there's a story that I just really, really like and really want, but just, I can't do it right now. I usually will not ask people to hold the story, but I will come back later and ask, did that story sell? Because I want people to be able to get their stories out there. And, so I
Mm-hmm.
want people to be able to try to sell their stories. But if their story did not sell, sometimes I'll come back and be like, is this story still available? If it is still available, I would like to make an offer on it now.
yeah, like rather than putting it in some sort of purgatory where they can't do anything else with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's a smart way of thinking about it. I think I went through all my questions.
Very cool. All right. Anything else that, Alex, you wanted to express or cover before we close our very fun stream today?
First, I'd just like to say again, thank you guys for having me on. The Mighty Sons of Hercules on Kickstarter will be running through the end of the month. This is a case where we actually do have to make our goal, because all these stories are on spec. I didn't have the money to pay for them outright, so I said, if you'll let me include these stories and we succeed in the Kickstarter, I'll cut you a check for them. And so that's the arrangement. We have to get that $6,000 goal so I can cut the checks to everybody and make it happen.
Yeah.
So that's why we definitely need to hit that goal for the Kickstarter.
We got 23 days to
Summer.
go. Almost halfway there right now.
Yep.
I just
Summer issue of Cirsova is out now. If you're thinking about submitting to us, we always recommend picking up at least one issue of the magazine so you get a good idea of the kind of stories that we buy and what we're looking for. Most recent issue is always as good a choice as any. And we do recommend people who want to submit to us read all of the guidelines. It's a little bit long, but they're all available on our website. Just check it out, read through it, and at the bottom there's information on how to contact us and send us your story. Don't send us your story before we're open. We'll probably lose it. We won't respond. Just send it during that week.
And truly, no one wants to see another elf take.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to also send again the link for the Harap the White story, the Romanian folklore, that we put up on Ko-Fi for anyone who wants to check it out. And stay tuned in our Ko-Fi even for the public content, because I want to do more Romanian folklore short stories, so nothing that can take up too much of your time, but still you can enjoy during a break or something.
Yeah, and that's a public post, so it's not hidden behind any kind of membership thing or anything.
Yes, yes.
Well, I really enjoyed our conversation today. Learned a few things, which is what I enjoy the most about Strange News, is finding out new things from Wisteria, and we got some really quality drops from Alex today as well. And I'm so glad that you were able to join us, and also glad that our audience was able to show up and share the experience with us as well. But we'll be signing off. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.